Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Raymond Yeung. Here are tonight's top stories. iCable gets the green light to surrender its pay TV license in June, 6 years earlier than scheduled. Police Chief Raymond Siu outlines a sharp increase in the number of fraud cases. And romance is in the air as Hong Kong lovers shake off the shackles of COVID and celebrate Valentine's Day. The government has approved iCable's application to give up its pay TV license in June, 6 years earlier than scheduled. The company says the move will not affect its free-to-air channels and staff will not be laid off. Chloe Fong reports.
Almost 30 years after its launch, iCable Communications will end its pay TV service on June the 1st. Its subsidiary, Hong Kong Cable Television, applied to terminate its pay TV license, and this was approved by the Executive Council today. The company said the decision was made because of the rapidly changing media landscape in Hong Kong and fierce competition among content providers and operators. The license ends on May the 31st, 6 years earlier than scheduled. All 680,000 subscribers will receive refunds. Trading in shares of iCable Communications was suspended this afternoon, but the company has applied for it to resume tomorrow morning. The firm said its free TV channels are not affected. It will continue to strive for strategic transformation by increasing investment in the free TV units and its multimedia business. The company operates 3 free-to-air channels, including this channel, HKIBC, Hoi TV, and the Hoi Infotainment channel, which was launched in December. The channels cover 99% of all households in Hong Kong. A spokesman said there are no plans to cut staff and would be recruiting more workers. The group recorded a net loss of $364 million in 2021 and $275 million in the previous year. Chloe Fong, HKIBC.
Free TV broadcasters and radio stations will have to provide at least 30 minutes of national security content per week. This will be implemented after the Communications Authority makes an order, or if the license is amended. The Executive Council also accepted the authority's recommendation to reduce the English language content on commercial radio and metro radio from 80% to 55%. The number of fraud cases last year jumped by 45% from 2021 to about 28,000. Police Commissioner Raymond Siu said the force has worked hard to warn the public through anti-scam advertisements, but cases continued to emerge.
Publicity is extremely important. The point is that whether these publicity on deception, whether it can get into the minds of the victims. I trust that many of the victims, when we talk to them, they knew that we have anti-deception publicity. But when asked whether they have looked into the content, they said no.
The overall number of criminal cases last year was slightly more than 70,000, 8.7% higher than in 2021. The increase was mainly driven by the surge in fraud cases, Siu said. He pledged to continue to work closely with the Office of the Communications Authority and mobile network providers to combat online and telephone scams. The force is also launching a new mobile phone app tomorrow that allows users to identify scams and pitfalls online. Former opposition lawmaker Au Nok Hin has given more details about meetings held before a primary election in 2020. He was testifying for the prosecution in the national security trial of 16 people. Macy Mock reports.
On the second day of his testimony, former lawmaker Au Nok Hin, one of the organizers of the primary election, gave more details about a meeting before the polls were held. Au met co-organizer Benny Tai along with opposition figures Lee Wing Tat, Lee Cheuk-yan, and Raphael Wong in January 2020 to discuss arrangements. According to Ao, Tai spoke about vetoing the budget twice to force the dissolution of the legislature and the resignation of the chief executive. Lee Wing-tat was said to have suggested asking the political group Power for Democracy to coordinate the primary election. He also suggested that Ao and Tai act as election coordinators. A month later, Ao, Tai, Lee Wing-tat, and Lee Cheuk-yan put forward the idea of a primary to some members of the Civic Party, which said it would consider the proposal. Ao said he approached 4 other opposition figures, including Joshua Wong, to tell them about the primary election. In his testimony, Ao said the primary should not restrict what lawmakers do once they are voted in. He went on to say that Tai had discussed meeting potential candidates for the primary in various districts. When asked by the prosecutor who attended the meeting in Kowloon East, Ao said he was worried he might miss out some names. His reply was met by gasps from some of the 16 defendants who pleaded not guilty to conspiracy to commit subversion. The hearing continues tomorrow. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
The chief executive has dismissed suggestions that the inclusion of national security clauses in land sale documents dampened investor confidence, resulting in property stocks sinking to a 6-week low yesterday.
Such a provision has been in place for quite a while, and there have been land sales since its introduction. So this factor is a natural factor that I think has no relevance at all to any decision by any businesses who are interested in bidding for sales of land, who will basically consider it from their business angle.
The clauses were included in August last year and enables the government to disqualify bids or suspend leases if there are national security concerns. Lee emphasized that protecting national security is everybody's responsibility. Turning overseas, earthquake-stricken Syria is now getting more help 1 week after a powerful tremor killed 38,000 people in the country and in neighboring Turkey. The United Nations has asked the Syrian government to ensure that the aid is evenly distributed. Sachin Kapur reports.
As search and rescue operations wind down, the focus has shifted to feeding and sheltering survivors of the 7.8 magnitude earthquake which struck Turkey and Syria last Monday. Much of the aid has gone to Turkey while Syria is struggling because of a scarcity of supplies. Syrian women who survived the calamity find themselves extremely vulnerable. Many lost their husbands, sons, and fathers, their sole breadwinners. The world turned upside down for Aisha, who was already displaced by the civil war in Syria. If hardships are a sign of God's love, it means God really loves the Syrian people, she said. For children who lost almost everything, a blown-up latex glove brought some joy. Aid from neighboring Jordan is trickling into Syria, providing much-needed medical supplies, surgical kits, and food. UN officials visited the capital Damascus and held discussions with the government to ensure aid reaches all quake-affected regions, including those controlled by rebels. Turkey, meanwhile, has shifted gear to salvage and recovery mode, with heavy equipment reaching many more affected areas. While time is running out, there was another miraculous rescue. Searchers saved 18-year-old Mohammad Kafer Setin, who was trapped for almost 200 hours in Adiyaman. Sachin Karpi, HKIBC.
A powerful cyclone has forced New Zealand to declare a state of emergency for only the 3rd time in its history.
This is just over the top. Really, you know, like the thunder and lightning and everything last night was just horrific. So, but the devastation is just, oh, it just makes you want to cry, to be honest. Very upsetting.
Cyclone Gabrielle caused widespread flooding and landslides in northern New Zealand. No casualties are confirmed so far, but there have been reports of people swimming to safety. as floods submerged their homes. More than 230,000 people have been left without electricity. The government said the cyclone is the strongest in a century and urged the nation to remain alert.
Even if the rainfall eases off a bit, more rainfall can compound on top of the rainfall that we've already seen. So when it comes to things like slips and so on, we could still see more of that even as the weather starts to ease. So we're still in for a bumpy time ahead.
In the United States, 3 people have been killed and 5 wounded in a shooting at Michigan State University. Students fled in panic when shots rang out after dinner last night in the city of East Lansing. The suspect was later found dead with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He had no links with the university. Ambulances and police arrived at the campus, where frightened students huddled anxiously. After a few hours, they were told that the threat was over. Hong Kong stocks slipped further amid jitters over a U.S. inflation report that will be released tonight. The Hang Seng Index finished 0.2% lower over worries of capital inflows. After losing 12.8% yesterday for asking help from unit holders to trim its debt, real estate investment fund Link REIT continued its decline, losing 1.4% today. Wuxi Biologics dropped 4%. As net profit is not expected to meet its target. Now let's look at the markets. The Hang Seng ended the day down by 50 points. The top 10 active stocks, the tracker fund lost 10 cents. Tencent lost $8, while Alibaba was down $1.50. JD.com was down $3.80, while Baidu was up 60 cents. The forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, the euro's at 8.44, the pound sterling 9.58, and the Australian dollar at 5.48. Over in Europe, the London FTSE is currently up 26 points. Financial markets expect Japan's next central banker to change course after a decade of cheap money. A parliamentary committee nominated academic Kazuo Ueda to be the governor of the Bank of Japan. Parliamentary approval is virtually assured, and he will succeed Haruhiko Kuroda, whose second 5-year term ends in April. Kuroda supports an ultra-loose monetary policy to spur the economy and encourage wage increases. His successor will have to grapple with challenges that include a weakening yen and rising inflation. Love was in the air as Hong Kong marked its first Valentine's Day after stepping out from the shadows of COVID. Hundreds of couples tied the knot today, marking a new high since the pandemic began. Joanna Ho reports.
Today is considered the most romantic day of the year when couples celebrate their love for each other. But there was a big difference on Valentine's Day this year as only a few COVID curbs remain. Despite the mask mandate, brides and grooms can now invite family members and friends to witness their big moment without having to worry about social distancing measures. A total of 248 pairs decided to get married today, the highest since COVID began. Although the number of Valentine's Day weddings was 26% lower than in 2019, it was 90% higher than in 2020. Among those exchanging vows were this couple who have been dating for 7.5 years since they first met in secondary school. They decided to tie the knot today so that it will be easy for them to remember their anniversary date. Romance was in the air when the groom said "I love you" to his bride in front of cameras and reporters outside the Tsim Sha Tsui marriage registry. This groom said he was happy to be able to invite more than 40 guests to witness his marriage. The Mongkok flower market, meanwhile, was thronged with people in search of the perfect bouquet for their loved ones. Vendors laid flowers outside their shops to attract customers with a wide selection. One florist said business was up 40 to 50% from previous years. Another said sales might even be close to pre-pandemic levels. Joanna Ho, HKIBC.
On to the weather now. Mainly fine and dry tomorrow. Temperatures will drop to a low of 12 degrees, rising to 19 degrees on Friday. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Tuesday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Raymond Yeung. Thanks for watching. Good night.